Brand new day. Welcome. We're coming to you live from our studios in Kokomlemle. Our digital address is GA0992539. Our top stories this hour. Disturbing development as residents in Obuasi attempt to send away persons with COVID-19 lodging at an isolation center there. We're live in Yashanti region this afternoon as we also find out what authorities there are doing about the situation. Also coming up, the story of how one person transferred the coronavirus to more than 500 others. How did this even happen? Well, don't forget to stay at home whilst we evaluate the situation as broadcast yesterday by President Akufo-Addo. And a rather interesting one from the son of a petrol seller to the Supreme Court of Ghana, Yoni Kolende, is set to be vetted for one of the top jobs at the Supreme Court. We'll bring you an exclusive view of his story ahead of his vetting tomorrow. Those are our top stories this hour. My name is Gifty Ando Apia, and I want you to be my guest. But before that, and before I bring you all of the other stories, remember you can join us on DSTV 421, on GoTV 144. We're streaming live also on YouTube, and you can join us with your thoughts and opinions on 0540109009. I'll take you back to Parliament, where the vetting for the Supreme Court judges is still ongoing.
Is any judge sitting in any jurisdiction lower the hierarchy who decides, or for any reason his or her attention is not brought to the position of the Supreme Court with respect to the ownership of a parcel, that judgment will certainly not stand the test of time. So I think that once the Supreme Court has made a definitive pronouncement relative to ownership either by a stool or a family, it settles it. The problem is whether the legal practitioner who is commencing an action would have known the position of the Supreme Court relative to the settlement of ownership of that parcel. But it will take time. The system will cleanse itself. So for areas that have still not been determined, over a period of time, I think the Supreme Court will be able to settle that question, because there are very many areas in Accra which have not been settled with respect to which family or which stool has the allodial ownership of those lands.
Yes, Nilanti Vanda. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And let me take the opportunity to congratulate the nominee for this enviable position. My Lord, first I want to take you back to the issue of conflict and, let me say, interpretation of certain spiritual issues pertaining to your religion. Coming from the Zongo, this question is very important to a lot of my women within those areas. But I want to start with an analogy. I'm a Muslim. I have two wives, one a Muslim, the other not. I die intestate. My Muslim wife will want your inheritance to be settled by the Quranic instruction. My Christian wife will want to insist that we look at the intestate succession law. In a situation like this, what will be, one, your objective assessment of the issue before you, and your conclusion in this? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, once again, this question has arisen over the years. Now, Islam is a religion that embodies everything. The culture and way of life of the Muslim is prescribed by the religion itself. But Islamic law is not the law of this country. The law of this country are laws created by this House and decrees of military regimes that have been accepted as law. So that is the municipal law. Now, where there is this conflict between Islamic law and the municipal law, certainly the municipal law will prevail because the Islamic law is not one of universal application. For the man who has decided to keep a Muslim wife on the one hand and a Christian wife on the other, will ordinarily be expected to have known that in the event of his death, Islamic law will not prevail. We are even having difficulties with situations where the 2 or 3 wives are Muslims, let alone a situation where they are diametrically different in terms of religion. So my simple answer is that PNDC Law 111, which regulates the property of the interstate, will not apply universally. What will happen is that where the widows are Muslim and all other beneficiaries are Muslim, and they are interested in the application of Islamic law, then there has to be unanimity. Because Islamic law, by the manner of distribution of estates, discriminates against women, because the ratio is 2 to 1. If all the beneficiaries agree that they want Islamic law to prevail, then of course what they have to do is to appoint the appropriate number of themselves to apply to the court for letters of administration. Then they seek advice from our Muslim clerics to advise them on how to deal with the distribution in accordance with Islamic law. At that stage, they will then be deemed to have exercised an election to abandon their rights under the statutes, and will then prescribe to rights under Islamic law, which they think should regulate the distribution of the estate. But Islamic law cannot be imposed even on the Muslim who, because of material things, decides that I do not want it to apply. I want to assert my right under the municipal law. Mr. Chairman, that is my answer.
Well, thank you very much. My next question will take you to one of your comfort zones. And I thank God that at this time, we have the Lord Chief Justice himself here, and I've also seen Justice Mafusian also behind you. The 3 of you very favorite people as far as football is concerned in this country. I have not said the House of Folk. You are saying it. My Lord, are you a House of Folk supporter? Chairman is saying it. No, it's Chairman who is saying it.
I was Kumasi Asante Kotoko.
Okay. Now to my question.
My Lord, well, if you are minded to answer that question, that's fine. But if I wish to ask you, I'll speak into the mic. Otherwise, please ignore his aside.
Very well.
Okay. You served as the chairman of the Disciplinary Dispute and Grievance Resolution Committee set up to investigate matters in relation to the Ghana Olympic Committee, Australian visa. What did you find, and who were the key actors in that scandal?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was chairman of a 5-man committee. Incidentally, it includes a member of this House, but he was not one of us when we dealt with that issue. So we sat as a committee of 3, myself and 2 distinguished personalities who by themselves have held very respectable positions in this country. As a subcommittee of the executive committee, we had very limited jurisdiction. First of all, we couldn't subpoena persons we suspected who were not members of the Olympic community. Because if the person did not belong to the Olympic community, you subpoena him or you invite him, he may have an election. He may decide not to come. So, at the end of the day, we found some members of the Ghana Olympic Committee to have acted inappropriately, and we recommended the necessary sanctions. But you see, the GOC has a funny structure. Whereas we are independent and we are not amenable to the control of an executive committee, they have a provision in their statutes where recommendations for disciplinary action are supposed to be voted upon and endorsed by the GOC at Congress. So all the persons we found to have one way or the other misconducted themselves, not directly related to those who embarrassed the country in Australia, but they appeared to have conducted themselves in a manner that the system put in place had been compromised. Congress decided not to accept our recommendation for sanctions, and that was the end of the matter. As for our compatriots who were directly involved in the visa scandal, we requested the executive board to seek the cooperation of the Ghana Immigration for us to have their names so as to explore the possibility of listening to their side of the story. The report we had was that Ghana Immigration was not willing to cooperate. So that is the end of the matter. But we did make recommendations for reform, because one of the things we found was that visa racketeering and corruption was endemic in all the sporting organizations, particularly when it comes to international travel. So we made sufficient recommendations to Congress. And I think, as a person interested in sports, the report having been discussed at Congress, you can seek to have a copy so as to guide you in your deliberations as an honorable member of Parliament. I will recommend that to you. Yes.
Thank you very much. Your recommendation is well noted. But still in that area, your work with the Ghana Football Association was also noted, to the extent that you were even given an award. You were ex-chairman of the Legal and Disciplinary Committee. Corruption in football for some time now has become a problem, from FIFA to UEFA, and in Ghana, our own number 12. We've had a situation where, after the Jamefe Commission, the case has been lingering within the confines of the courts for years. And I remember the Lord Chief Justice assured me, now that we have the Lord Chief Justice there, Justice Mafusian there, yourself joining, what assurances will you give this House and the country as a whole that with your interest in football, you will make sure that this case is dispensed with, so that people are dealt with, so that it will serve as a deterrent for people who think that football is one of the avenues to make money and to enrich themselves at the expense of the nation and the people who are involved in the game. Thank you.
I hope you're not asking the judges to be football biased.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm made to understand with respect to the implementation of the report of Justice Jamefe Commission that an appeal was filed from that decision, and an application for some form of stay had been granted. I'm not privy to the facts, but if the honorable member can make available any of the processes filed, I will prompt His Lordship the Chief Justice with a view to identifying where exactly the processes are. And then whoever is a party in it.
That's Justice Yusuf Imoro Amadou Tanko there being vetted so that he's a nominee for the Supreme Court. So he's being vetted at the moment. I tell you one more person who is going to be vetted tomorrow. From a humble beginning as a son of a Pito seller who defied the odds of being tied down by poverty, he's now excelled in the legal profession and on the verge of being a justice of the Supreme Court of Ghana if approved. Lawyer Yoni Kolendi is Executive Secretary of Kolendi at Law, hails from Issa, one of Ghana's poorest communities where educational facilities were limited. He was nominated by President Akufo-Addo a couple of months ago with 3 others as justices of the Supreme Court, subject to parliamentary vetting and approval, as you just saw. Ahead of that vetting, his vetting tomorrow on JoyNews, Upper West correspondent Rafiq Salam takes a closer look at the life of the lawyer Yoni Kolendi.
To those who know him well, he is Emmanuel Yoni Kolendi, born 56 years ago to a Second World War veteran, RSM Tembela Maluri Kolendi and Kanchoma Tembela. He is the 4th of 7 children of Kanchoma who used to brew local pito for sale at one of Ghana's slums, Wazongo. A chick that will grow into a rooster can be spotted the very day it hatches. Yoni Kolendi exhibited those qualities. His senior brother, now a businessman, Joseph Tembela Dakora, is therefore not surprised about his meteoric rise in the legal profession.
I saw him. He came out as a bright individual in the family, and he has been with those futures from the start. At his early days, he was very much involved in Christianity, which took him to the...
Yoni himself has never hidden his ambition and love for the legal profession right from his lower primary days at Ndamba School.
If you met anybody who taught me, any of my teachers, and you asked them about me, even in primary 2, I used to say I'll become a lawyer. But my resolve to become a lawyer was fired when I went through the tragedy of my life. And anybody who knows me and has followed my work as a lawyer will appreciate that it's a work I do with total commitment. I don't kid or mess around it.
He, however, had a blip in his educational career at Ward Secondary School when he was in his 5th year, which made him to spend almost 2 years at the war prisons as a remand prisoner. Matthew Bambason was a teacher at the school.
He was among one of 10 of my brilliant students. Very bright. He was very super, very gentle. I know too well that if he was allowed, I thought he could have been a doctor. So I was surprised when he became a lawyer.
Issa, Yoni's home village is 56 kilometers away from the regional capital. The Upper West region is considered as one of Ghana's poorest regions. Narrowing it to Issa, it is worse. Poverty is more endemic, coupled with limited educational opportunities. And this is the last place anyone who expects could produce a Supreme Court judge. It is stories like that of Yoni that inspires people like Ibrahim Seydi Bamanjo. He too, a native of Goropie, which is located 22 kilometers away from Wa, wants to be a practicing lawyer one day.
The only thing we need in life is efforts and the stamina to move ahead in spite of everything. So I think that what he has done has been a great source of inspiration for all of us. Whether you are in town, you are in village, you are wherever you find yourself in the Upper West region.
Like the fowl that does not forget who trim his feathers during the rainy season, Yoni, despite his stature in society, hasn't turned his back on his native Issa, says District Chief Executive for the Fima Bure Issa, Nadi Moro Sanda.
Lawyer asked me, he said, when you go to hospital, where is the first point of call? And I said, an OPD. He asked whether we have an OPD. I said, no, we don't have an OPD, but we have a proposal. There's some design drawings for an OPD. Now, once we don't have an OPD, he was going to help us with an OPD. Then he engaged consultants, they expanded the drawings, and then the cost went up. As I talk to you, the cost is now running above 300,000 Ghana cedis.
The people of the Upper West region will be glued to their television sets to watch their own unit grilled by members of Ghana's parliament. They will wait with bated breath for its approval and subsequent swearing in by the president. When that is done, the father of four will be on record as the first person in the 37-year history of the Upper West region to sit as a justice at the apex court of the land. Reporting for JoyNews, Rafiq Salam. Wah.
And we'll certainly be here to put the spotlight on all of those who have been vetted like we've done today. That is for Yoni Kulendi. Away from that, there are some fears in Germany that there could be a second wave of infections. The reproduction rate has gone up for a second day in a row, up the 1.0 mark. And the news comes in the midst of lockdown measures being relaxed in Germany. And if you follow the conversation, it's been similar here in Ghana, where there have been concerns. When were the restrictions going to be removed? Yesterday, the president addressed the nation, and people were expectant that there will be some review of the restrictions. Well, Germany has done so, and it doesn't look good after they did that. Let's find out more of what has happened. Thomas Powers, political correspondent with our partners DW. He joins me all the way from Germany. Hi, Thomas. It's good to have you once again. Now, this is a very disturbing news, I must say, because here in Ghana, we've been learning from people around the world, and people had called for easing of the restriction on public gathering, for example, here in Ghana. But we're seeing that when Germany did that, it's not helping that much.
Concluding remark, if you will, there is still a long way to go, and only the restrictions, the real big restrictions, began last week after Angela Merkel announced them on Wednesday. Obviously, prior to that, Germany had had a first round of easing of restrictions, but authorities have said that although that reproduction rate has increased, and it is a worrying sign, it is obviously still too early to say whether the measures that were taken are actually having the effect that has not been desired by the authorities. So it's important to have that caveat, Gifty, but yes, I would agree with you that this is a debate that's going on not only here or in Ghana, actually in many countries around the world. They're debating how exactly and when to ease restrictions, and that's because authorities all over the world are facing a big dilemma. It is clear that societies want to get back to normal in some way or another, but at the same time, authorities have to make sure that numbers don't go up as they put in practice those.
Looks like I'm having a bit of a problem hearing you, Thomas. That sound is very low. Let's take a very quick break whilst we fix that, and we'll come back with Thomas for the rest of the story. Welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. We've sorted that out. Let me talk to Thomas again. Thomas, you were telling us, you're telling us how this cannot be conclusively stated, but we also know that it looks as if the easing of the restrictions have not been good at the moment.
That's correct, Gifty. So sorry again for the sound problems. I don't know exactly what happened, but I hope you can hear me now, and your audience can hear me now as well. I was indeed mentioning that this is a big debate happening here in Germany, but not also in Germany, in other parts of Europe and around the world as well, how to balance that idea, that goal of going back to normality, even if it's a new sense of normality, while at the same time making sure that people can be safe and healthy. One of the main arguments here, and one, by the way, that Angela Merkel, the Chancellor, restated today on Monday, is the fact that people here in Germany have to be cautious. They still have to comply with all the hygiene and social distancing measures that are in place, because that is essentially what can guarantee that the numbers don't go up in the country. So that R number, that reproduction rate here in Germany, is certainly something that is of concern here in Germany, but it is not something conclusive just yet. And that's why German authorities have been asking people to remain cautious and remain with that sense of complying with all the rules and regulations that are still in place.
You talk about the fact that the numbers, the rate of infection seems to have gone up. Can you break that down for us to understand? Exactly how can you tell that the rates, that a lot more people are being infected faster?
So the rate of reproduction, the reproduction rate, or the R factor, some people call it as well, is an important number because it shows how many people can get infected by one infected person. So basically, if the number is 1, it means that one person is infecting another person. If it goes below 1, it means essentially that the government or the authorities are going in the right direction. It has to be below 1. If it goes above 1, it is a sign of concern because it also shows to what extent the health system in one particular country could be overwhelmed in a matter of months. So if, for example, 10 people infect 17 or 18, then you can make that an exponential growth and see how big of a problem that might be. So again, the number that people have to look at is that 1.0, and the goal that people have to try and achieve is below that 1.0. Germany had that number of below 1.0 for some time, but for the last 2 days it's been above 1.0, so that's the reason why it's a matter of concern here in the country. Again, the important element there is that it shows to what extent the health system has a capacity to deal with people that get infected. So that's why this number is very important, not only here in Germany, but as an international number as well, to see how different countries can deal with this and how the systems, the health systems, can actually confront the coronavirus pandemic.
It's interesting that you say, because here in Ghana, just last week, we are told that one person was able to infect as many as more than 500 people. And we're told that this happened in a factory. We're yet to get a lot more details on that. But this is certainly a lot of a problem for a country that's health system isn't as robust. So how are authorities there handling this situation, apart from just telling people to tread cautiously? Because obviously that's not enough. People would do what they want to do anyway.
That it's important to stress that this is on average, so it doesn't necessarily mean that every person would then infect one person. This is an average number, and this is only one statistic that is analyzed by governments around the world. Another number is the one that you and I have discussed on many occasions here, the number of infected or the number of people who have died. So there are different variables that have to be considered, but one again that is important in this particular case is this R factor that we're talking about, the reproduction rate. When you ask specifically about what the German government is doing, you're correct. I mean, it's not only about telling people to behave and telling people to remain cautious. German government and German authorities in general have something that has been described as a sort of emergency brake. The goal there is to avoid a nationwide lockdown. So, for example, if a district in Germany, any district, has 50 confirmed cases per 100,000 inhabitants in the space of 7 days, then that district or that region will have to reintroduce restrictions. Again, the goal is to avoid a national lockdown and to act locally and regionally. So now it's basically up to regional governments, and you can imagine that that's difficult because of coordination issues, to decide in what point and under what conditions then they will reintroduce measures. There have already been, I think, 2 or 3 cases in Germany where districts have reported those more than 50 cases per 100,000 inhabitants. In one of those cases or 2 of those cases, it was also in slaughterhouses, so meat processing centers. That's becoming a very big problem here in Germany, as well as care homes. So that gives you an idea of how the government here is dealing with this. Again, it's not only about telling people to behave, it's also about this emergency handbrake that was devised by regional and by federal leaders to try and make sure that when something happens, when there's a so-called cluster of infections, that can be dealt in a quick way, locally or regionally.
Interesting. Thomas there with updates from Berlin. Thomas, thank you so much for that update. We're looking forward to getting better news as we go along. But before I let you go, I almost forgot. How are people reacting to the news that easing the restriction too soon may be problematic. Do people even understand, and is it informing their behavior?
Gifty, I was missing that question from you because we always discuss something that is particularly important for both you over there and for us here, and that is what people are thinking, how people are actually reacting. This is a particularly important question, so I was actually missing that question from you. There are different views here. So in the last few days, for example, there have been protests here in Germany in different cities of people even defying some of the government social distancing measures. Some of them have even turned violent. And they have been criticized, and there are fears also from the political sphere that these protests could be used for political and extremist views. Those are people who are protesting against restrictions. But then if you look at polls, if you look at poll numbers that have been presented in recent days and recent weeks, people do tend, a majority does tend to be in favor of what the government is presenting. So a majority of Germans have said that they support the way the government has been handling the crisis, and a majority of Germans also support the way the German Chancellor has been presenting those proposals. So yes, there are certain protests in different German cities, but overall, if you trust those polls that have been coming out, a majority of Germans do seem in favor of the way the government has been handling the issue.
Thomas, thank you for that update. Thomas Sparrow, the political correspondent with our partners. I almost missed the usual question. Thomas, thank you. We'll come to you again during the course of the week. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic, according to experts, will have dire consequences for global economies. We've already seen what's happening around the world. The United States, one of the biggest economies of the world, if not the biggest. Well, Ghana will equally suffer. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, in a recent article, stated it may take the nation at least 3 years to recover from the impact of COVID-19. Businesses have, over the past months, urged government to assist keep them afloat. Government has since announced a 600 million stimulus package to be distributed later, and a lot of people are looking forward to that. Former Finance Minister Seth Tekbe is my guest this afternoon. We'll have that conversation. I want you to be a part of that conversation. Go on our Facebook or our Twitter handle and drop me a question. You can also send me your thoughts on our WhatsApp platform on 0540109009. That's 0540109009. We put it off at the moment because some of you call, even when we asked you to just send a WhatsApp. So I'll be reading some of your questions or your messages to Mr. Tekbe. But do join us in that conversation. Mr. Tekbe, it's good to have you, as always.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, listeners and viewers.
All right. So, you know, it always amazes me, and I've been wanting to ask, what will you be doing as Finance Minister if this COVID-19 times was when you were Minister? At the moment?
Well, let me thank you. Let me say that every finance minister goes through one crisis or the other.
Really?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
When I started my career in the Ministry of Finance back in the early 1980s, one of the biggest issues that came out of the 70s was the bushfires, which devastated our forests, affected cocoa trees and others. And when your cocoa tree is affected, for example, it means that, there will be no, exports.
Because of course it's one of our major exports.
Our major exports. Right. So you get it. Then fast forward, as the economy grew, we outgrew our cost of modal. Yeah. And that meant, it tells you that the power crisis is not something, that new. But the demand for power was, and compared to supply, was worsened back then by a drought that affected the level of the river. And back then you would wake up as a nation, and we were glued to what is the level of the water dam.
And be praying that it rains.
It rains, and they will show, this.
Yes.
There
used to be a bar. I remember that.
Still there, yes. You don't see it when the water.
Yes, and the newspapers have that at the front page.
They had it at the front page, and, that means that industry cannot, produce. Then fast forward, you come to the Meres Mahama, and this spanned the Rawlings, what I'm talking about, to the J. Kufuor era. J. Kufuor, woke up to realize that our debts were just rising, and it was a painful decision for a president. Some say we declared bankruptcy, HIPIC, if you remember, because it was, the budget was tight, it was difficult. Yeah. But if you move forward, just when President Kufuor was leaving office, there was a global financial crisis in 2008, which then landed on the laps of President and the late President Mills, and it continued for 10 years, for a decade. So when the finance minister is talking about 3 years,
You think that he's gauging from what happened in the past?
Yeah, we'll
come to that. Okay.
Yes.
So you're putting together these things as you're chronicling the things that happened that put pressure on you as a finance minister.
The shocks that you... And so every finance minister should be prepared. Okay. For one shock or the other. You'll be lucky not to confront.
But this is, COVID-19 is like nothing the world has experienced before. I mean, you can talk about that. but you can talk about, yes, you can talk about power. This is really different. You can talk about the power situation. I mean, people have it. In fact, Ghana that was having a power problem was exporting power at some point anyway. So
well, modern day Ghana, yes.
Yeah, that tells you that people had it worse.
I know, but if we were independent, you could ask a war minister, what happened during the world wars,
right.
During other. I'm not downplaying it, but
okay.
But the perspective I want to discuss is that, and this is why countries prepare for buffers.
Could we ever have prepared for something like COVID-19, in your opinion?
We could have lessened our ability to provide more funds and therefore not borrow more. And let me give you a specific example.
Explain that for me. I'm a bit confused. You said we could have lessened...
we took 1 billion, right, from, say, the IMF. Could we, at this time, have gone to the IMF and asked for 500 or 800? And let me put it in context.
Yes, I'm not getting it.
We were not always prepared, because when times are good for cocoa, when times were good for gold, the two commodities at the time, we didn't put some in store, for the hard times.
Okay.
Right. So when we got petrol, we decided that in our collective wisdom, the countries that harbor shocks better are the ones who put something aside. So we put up the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. So you know what I'm talking about by now, the Stabilization Fund.
Yeah.
And I insist that we have made progress. In the sense that in 2015, as part of the global financial crisis and then the fall in crude oil price, the power crisis, and all those things put together, there were many of them, we had to fall on the Stabilization Fund. And we took out 250 million Ghana cedis. We persisted, even when times were hard in 2015, 2016, when crude oil prices fell. And we built the Stabilization Fund.
Okay.
As of March, we are told we can withdraw up to 250 million, same figure, but US dollars.
As of March this year?
This year. That's how much we are taking from the Stabilization Fund. 250 million US dollars, no longer cedis.
Okay.
So if you multiply by 5. Now what does that mean? We didn't get support for 250 for Ebola, for power crisis, and for others.
Okay.
We are getting a 1 billion support, which is a loan, by the way. But remember that this may be the first time, and that's some correction, this may be the first time that Ghana has gone into its own resources, right, to provide 1/4 of what the IMF was giving us. Never happened.
Okay.
And this is the lesson, which I want, to portray. Now,
so if I understand what you're saying, you're saying that because of the preparation ahead
that we made when crude oil prices were high,
with the Stabilization Fund, Ghana has something to fall on now in COVID-19.
which in the past, you can go back to our history, we never went into our savings.
Okay.
And that's because we are treating oil differently from the way we treated gold or we treated cocoa. We have a law that says that whenever you are not in crisis and you are producing, you must put a certain percentage, right, for budget, 70% after GMPC, 70% of that should go into infrastructure, 21% into the stabilization fund, 9% into the heritage fund. It is that 21% we're putting aside in good times.
Okay.
Now the difference...
I want us to come back to this conversation. We need to take a very quick break right now, and we'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back to the show, and I'm very certain you know what just happened. We'll just move on with our conversation. My special guest is Tekwe, former finance minister. We're talking about Ghana's preparedness and our ability to support businesses in these times of COVID-19. And I was just asking him what he would have done, if he was a finance minister. He started by going through with us what finance ministers go through, that, you know, one crisis or the other could come your way, but this is pretty different. And so he was explaining to me how the stabilization fund has been a cushion for Ghana in these times. Let's wrap up on that whilst I move on to my next part of the discussion, Mr. Tekwe. So I get the feeling that you're trying to take some sort of credit here. I mean, it's not bad to take credit when you do something good.
That's the nation. Because we don't want this conversation to be viewed in too much of a
exactly the point I was trying to make. So you're saying that essentially because we were able to save up back then, it's become some sort of a cushion for us at this time.
You remember the first announcement that was made was that we were going to take money from the stabilization fund. And we even flirted with the idea of taking money from the heritage fund, which didn't go down well with many people. So the point I'm making is, if we didn't have $250 million US dollars for our own money,
we would have needed more.
Asking for exactly 1.25 million. Okay. So I'm drawing the attention of Ghanaians to the fact that yes, this crisis is deep, right? But we have started something, right? Which countries do. This is what you call a sovereign wealth fund. Okay. And this is what, you know, Dubai, this is what Singapore and all the countries that are able to announce at a go. Sometimes if they are going to borrow, is because they have a buffer or they have a stabilizer. All right. So I am saying that as a nation, we have to continue with this. Okay. And the context is that much of what we are using now was built when we had one oil field. Okay. So could we have done more? Could we have been falling on $500 million US dollars, for example, if we had increased the fund, the level of investment after the stabilization fund? Yes. All right. Right. Okay. So yeah. So let's move on from there. Now, the finance minister is saying it's going to take us post-COVID, and we don't even know when that post-COVID is, because as it stands now, nobody can predict this, the pace of the virus. We don't know when that is for us to add the 3 years to see. What's your own prediction of the effects that this is going to have on the... Well, I can understand, because, you know, I'm using examples so that we can connect. Okay. You can ask cocoa farmers what it felt like back then. You can ask the then Minister for Finance, the then Governor, what did it feel like to be expecting rains to stop the bushfires for cocoa to come up again. And it's nature. It's difficult to predict. You could ask how long, you know, President Mahama and my good self were waiting for the West Africa Gas Company to fix that pipeline. It took 2.5 years. In the end, we had to go through budgets, you know, and the rest. So when it comes to COVID, it could be fast, and that's what we are hoping, you know, so that the effect on the economy, you know, wouldn't be so much, and that could come with a vaccine.
Okay. When you say the effect on economies wouldn't be so much, what's your expectation? Coming from what you just explained, the things that you went through, put all that together, although this is pretty different, what deductions can you make from where you sit of the sort of effect we're looking at
The
post-COVID?
cause is different. The effect is the same but severe. Okay. Let me explain. One cause may be power, one cause may be bushfires. And you mentioned it. The net effect, less export revenue. And now hotels are added, and others, foreigners who come and stay, and others are. So previously it would have been only your cocoa revenue going down, or your gold revenue going down, or as in 2014, your crude oil, going down. But you get less foreign exchange, you get less tax revenue, and therefore you have to borrow to plug the hole, and then your debt goes up and the rest. And so the effect then depends on how long it takes for the economy to mend.
Okay.
And sometimes it is how long it takes for the advanced countries' economy to mend.
Okay.
Because they are the ones who buy our cocoa, they are the ones who buy our gold, they are the ones who buy our crude oil. It takes how long the problem between Russia and Saudi Arabia and OPEC will be resolved, so that when the demand comes up, they would probably hold their fire, and crude oil prices will recover. Because for us, it's good for us when it's low in terms of consumption, but it's also not good for us when it's low in terms of export, because we have become net exporters
of oil.
Yes.
Right.
So this is how to analyze, because remember, government is the largest employer. When government suffers and doesn't get taxes, it doesn't award contracts to private sector. It doesn't. That's more some of the direct effect. It doesn't employ. The economy doesn't grow, so government itself does not employ. But the secondary effect, of government borrowing, say from banks, means that the cost of borrowing will be higher for private sector who are already struggling. So these are some of the effects.
How will the cost of borrowing be higher? Because I think what we've heard is that a lot more, in fact, institutions are urging people to borrow. So they're making it much easier for people to borrow. Isn't that the case?
Yes, that is what you call the measures that you put in place to help the economy.
Okay.
So if lending rates were, say, 26, 27%, banks themselves are suffering, and loans are not being repaid.
Yeah.
So better to lower the interest rate, right, or to even forgive some debt, because as countries' debt is forgiven, or stretch the time for repayment, so that the business that is working half the time, not to talk about those who are not working at all. So if the business is not working at all, the bank can say, together with Bank of Ghana, why don't we defer payment of loans or repayment of loans for 3 months, for 4 months, right? Otherwise, the interest will be increasing, and the debt will only be increasing. We have just come out of, the banking pressures and other.
So we are not yet out anyway.
We are not yet out, exactly. So this is even worsening it. So when banks are taking those measures, we must know that there are no normal measures, there are no normal way of,
So from what you're saying, the banks are more likely to charge higher because they are suffering, but it will take government to put in the policies that makes that reverses that. Am I getting it?
No. Ordinarily, they could insist and say, you pay me what is due. But if I haven't to pay my hotel, if I shut down, if I'm at home, my beauty salon is not open. We're not talking about big banks only. Microfinance, savings and loan. I'm not in the salon. I'm not doing hair. I'm not cutting, whatever. Small businesses, I'm not in the market. Right? Movement has been, my vehicle is not going to work. So if I take a loan, how do you expect me to pay? If you hold me to court, I guess everybody will understand why I'm not paying. So I'm saying two things. For banks, for those who are working, but maybe below capacity, you ease the repayment. because they are not making enough
So who
money.
is easing the repayments? You mean the bank should ease the repayments for their
Oh, I
clients?
get your question. The banks can do it on their own, or Bank of Ghana, together with the government, can come in and prevail on them. And if you are endowed, and this is where my preparation comes in again, you could put part of the money, right, to subsidize. So if a bank, you can tell a bank, why don't you reduce interest rate, by 5%?
Okay.
Right? They are losing money. But you could say we can dip into the bucket, the budget, and, subsidize that reduction by half, 2.5%. So the bank is not losing 5%. The bank is losing, say, 2.5%.
I think that's not something that we'll be able to do at the moment, don't you think?
No, I think the Bankers Association has come out with a number of schemes together with the, I think the president spoke about.
I was referring to your final suggestion that you dig into the coffers and then use the money to support people, to subsidize.
No, it's going to be difficult, but that is the way some of the, say, 600 million. So if the banks are no longer able to lend, and remember, it is the banks that are going to work with MD, SSI, with Minister of Finance. So maybe 250 or so of that money can be channeled through the banks, for SMEs. Because after all, if I want to know whether an SME, if it takes a loan, can repay, I want to know his banker.
I want us to, we'll focus, I'll bring the 600 million, I'll put it down for us to have a quick discussion on that before we wrap up. But if I understand you right, you talk about the measures to support the industry. You talk about a lower interest rates, stretching the time for repayments or deferring repayments for loans, etc.
And there were household measures, also, for example, electricity, water, and all those measures, all of which are coming partly from the borrowing, partly from the budget, already if you realign expenditure, and part of which are coming from the money that we are taking out of the stabilization fund.
So these are the things I take it, these are things you would have done if you were finance minister in these times.
I mean, definitely, that's what many countries are doing. There are methods of supporting. Let me give you a practical example. When we had the power crisis, an example, since you asked me what we would have done, when we had the power crisis, and we couldn't dip into the budget, we also realized that crude oil prices had fallen, and maybe consumers could take a little more. Yes, they were suffering, right? But we needed to put the non-performing loans behind us. So you understand ESLA. So that was injected to the banks, into the 250 million into the banks, 2.2 billion of non-performing loans were taken off their books to be repaid by ESLA, and that eases the ability to continue supporting, private sector.
But what's the guarantee? It doesn't, unless there's some sort of agreements with these financial institutions. Otherwise, what's the guarantee that even as you write off their debt, that they're going to then transfer it to the people they deal with?
Well, you establish a bad record. If you take as I said, there could be another crisis. Maybe something could happen to your business, not the economy as a whole, And so, if you are giving this facility and you are not very faithful with it, you are establishing a very bad record, with your bankers, with government, and with everything. Because remember, there's going to be statistics. This is often thought through. You have meetings with the Minister of Finance, the governor, and everybody, throwing it at the seasoned public servants who have gone through, maybe somebody who has been a Minister of Finance for, say, 30 years, right, is in a position to offer, advice to a Minister of Finance who has come in 4 years, even if you are a financial expert.
Are you saying that the finance minister should seek more advice from people who have been there for?
He has advisors. That's why he has specialized units in the Ministry of Finance.
So he has advisors. So he can move on from there. Let's talk about.
He has employees
who are supposed to advise him.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 600 million. That intervention. Is it a stimulus package? Would you call it a stimulus package?
Anything that alleviates. Yes, it's a stimulus package.
Okay.
Because what you are doing is that stimulus only means that you are stimulating the economy. An economy that is down. And you use various methods. You use aid. You use, grants. You help households. You help, You know, so it is a stimulus package.
Are you convinced that this sort of stimulus package will work? 600 million. Are you convinced that it will work?
It's better than zero. and as I said, you know, we should be thankful that we are able to get loans, we are able to go into stabilization fund, we are able to do some additional borrowing, World Bank and others, you know, to put money together, you know, to do this sort of thing. Unlike advanced countries where they are depending on their own resources, their own ability to borrow and whatever. For developing countries, often the lender of last resort is the IMF, which is why, you know, some of us were saying let's be cautious. In our bullish approach to saying that we are exiting the fund and we don't want to have anything to do.
Well, we did. Nobody predicted COVID-19 back then, did we?
Of course, I said crisis would always come.
Okay, but
so yes, crisis will always come. So to say that you can manage an economy without crisis, you know, it's not practical.
So 600 million for you is good enough for our context.
Let me put it this way: if you did a little economics, we always say that there are wants and there are needs. There are ability. Everything is in short supply. You know, so I'm saying, remember, we were using 98% of tax revenue to pay interest, that service, you know, part of servicing of loans, and to pay government workers. And so in that position, it would have been extremely difficult for government to offer any support. So if whatever we can put together, we are doing with 600, I would say it is more of how efficiently
we manage it.
Use the 600.
How would you manage this 600 million, again, if you were finance minister?
I don't want to preempt what the government...
No, you don't need to preempt. This is purely hypothesis, you know, and you've been there before, so you're better...
Well, let me give practical instance where, though not in a crisis, excuse me, we often get some such loans which we channel through the banks, you know, to help agri sector, to help. One, you would want to know who are the beneficiaries, their records, so you set up a criteria, right? What is your filing, you know, of say tax returns, because you get a lot from the tax returns. So from a tax return or from Registrar General filing, we are able to determine that, you know, you made so much sales, you made so much expenses, your profit is so much, you are a viable entity, you are not making losses, right? So if you are categorizing businesses, then you would look at businesses that are healthy in themselves but are having problems. There's then the mid-range, and then there are those. Some of them may not be making, you know, profit at this time, but they were profitable. Some of them may be shut down, but they are profitable. So you look at one past performance, and then you look at potential. And because the resources cannot go around to everybody, there must be some objective criteria for selection. And so you must have some of the things I'm talking about as a criteria. You must have also a good spread, you know, because remember, Accra is not the center of the... Accra is a central, you know, nexus, followed by Kumasi, Sekendari, Takoradi, but there are people who are also doing business in Sunyani, people who are doing... So it's not an easy task, you know, to be... But then you have to be seen to be objective, you know, establishing objective criteria.
Do you fear that this 600 million will not be distributed objectively from where you sit?
I think that would be second guessing, you know, the government, and I would prefer that I see, the president has said that, you know, very soon they will be announcing some of the, you know, disbursements, the criteria. I would rather that maybe we can have a follow-up, you know, discussion if those are published, you know, rather than, you know, raise too much excitement.
It was announced some time back. As of now, it's not started this disbursement. Is that worrying, or is that okay, based on what you have seen before at the finance ministry, that the processes ought to be followed?
The processes had to be followed. At the time it was announced, it's probably like the 100 million. We were at 100 million, which went up to 500 and then to 1 billion. We were probably anticipating some help from the IMF and from other sources, you know, which may have delayed. And so now that we have had the resources flowing in from the World Bank, from the IMF, you know, from other sources, some may come from African development, maybe this is the time, you know, to move. Better late than never, you know, yes. So we'll just have to take the president at his word and see.
Okay.
But yes, in the course of that, businesses will definitely have loss. Yeah.
And my last two questions: if you were to be doing this distribution, the ranges that you gave me, companies that are making profits, companies that are not making profit but that have potential, who will be your priority?
Well, if you take the guidance that is given to countries, the first guidance is that because we are dealing with a health situation, if we were dealing with power, I would look at who are the ones who are most dependent on power, maybe heavy industry and the rest, which is something that we try to do. But the guidance now is help the health sector. So because you want to stop a disease, you don't want too many people.
Yeah.
So those who are producing PPEs, those who are have laboratories that can be roped in, to if they need one or two equipments, which may be needed for them to expand the testing and others. So the health sector will definitely be, one of the top priorities. And then you may want to, look at stabilizing, from energy to others. We are now in the rainy season, and we want to stabilize food production. So you may want to begin to also prioritize agric and agric processing, so that you don't have a food situation on your hand in addition to having a health situation.
That would be terrible.
So those are some of the some of the things that come in.
That come to you ready. Okay. My final question is: recently, there's been a sort of a brief. There was actually a brief banter with a website, a fact-checking website, about figures that they collated from government and then from IMF, and the point they made was that government had provided different figures to the Parliament of Ghana and different figures to IMF. I'm sure you followed that discussion.
I've been writing about them actually since 2017.
Exactly. So, but the IMF have come to say that the figure that they had on the website, they generated that figure. What's your position on that back and forth, so to speak?
Yeah, I know we're getting to the close, but let me just try and explain this as quickly as I can.
And briefly as possible.
If you have revenue coming in, it's about what do you disclose. So if you have revenue coming in at 100, you have your expenditure coming in at 20, and an exceptional situation comes in at 120, and an exceptional situation comes in, and an exceptional situation can be single spine, it can be power, right? It can be bank bailout, it can be energy costs, as I said, you can go back, and that costs you an additional 20, right? How do you disclose your expenditure that has gone up from 120, to 140? This is the issue.
Okay, if you can just break it down for me. So let me give you an example of the deficit.
Your normal revenue, your normal revenue is 100.
All right.
Right. Let's take a household. Let's take a business for us to understand.
Yeah.
Your normal income or revenue is 100.
Okay.
Your normal expenditure, which is say food on the table and whatever, is 120.
Okay.
Because maybe you bought furniture and you are paying, so you borrow, so you have spent more. The difference is 20. That is your deficit because your expenditure is higher. Your child falls sick. Your brilliant child qualifies for university, whatever. You may want to go and borrow more. So then it increases from your normal 120, including the loans that you are paying, to 130. How do you disclose the additional 10? This is the question.
Okay.
Right? You can say that, and what,
if you could just relate the story you just given me to our situation, the GDP deficit, right?
Yes, it's a deficit. It's actually the budget deficit, and then which goes to the debt. So if you tell the nation that the normal income is 100, now we are talking about the nation, I'm using the same figures. The normal expenditure is 110. And therefore the difference is 10. And then you put the additional 10 for bailout and for energy costs in a footnote, right? It is still money which Ghanaians, still expenditure which Ghanaians are going to finance. So don't tell me that the difference right, is 10%. Remember, 10 difference over 100 is 10%. Okay. If you have borrowed 10 more, you have to add it, and your difference goes up by an additional 10.
So your position is that government shouldn't have put the other figures it puts in the footnotes there, that everything there, as long as it's part of our expenditure, should have been in the...
Because this is the only government. Remember, I was telling you, otherwise, if you want to compare your performance, right, to that of President Mahama, or to that of President Kufuor, or Rawlings, or Atta Mills, then take out my single spine. Because I have included the single spine in my expenditure in calculating my deficit. Okay. And you are taking out your additional cost, which is the bank bailout cost. You are taking it out and saying that you are performing better than me.
Okay, so that's where the issue is.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, they're saying that they did not present different figures to Ghanaians and different figures to IMF.
No, they are different figures.
The NDC's
no, they are
position
different figures because the thing you put it in a footnote. And remember, it takes a technical person like myself. When you were reading the budget and you say that my expenditure is 120, it's not everybody who has a technical, mindset. Even if you went to school, you may have read arts, you may have read, so reading a balance sheet is something different. So we are saying, in the interest of all Ghanaians who need to understand, tell us that I have 100, my expenditure of 110 has increased to 120, right? And even if I'm putting it in a footnote, tell me that you are putting it in a footnote. Don't tell me that my expenditure is 110, as if everything is normal.
When you have excesses that are left in the footnotes.
Precisely. You have things that are left in the footnote, and then you are comparing your performance.
So it doesn't allow for balanced comparison as far as you're concerned.
Exactly, because remember some of the statements were over the last 15 years. Okay. This is the first time that we have reduced the deficit, by so much and all that. 15 years means that you are going back to President Kufuor. You are going back probably even to J.J. Rawlings. And it's not fair because they included all the costs in their calculation. So you cannot come and then do that kind of comparison.
Isn't it a matter of style? I know we're wrapping up and we need to run out of time.
No,
but isn't it a matter of style?
No,
I mean,
no, because we
anybody appreciating a document should be able to appreciate the footnotes because it adds to making sense, right?
No. Why didn't many Ghanaians catch up? As I said, it's not everybody who went to read a balance sheet in school. You can have a PhD who may not have read the balance because for example, I may have gone to the same university with my classmate. I dare not go to a theater and be talking about, how to cure a human being. Okay. You understand? Yes.
All right.
And so, just to wrap up, the point I'm making is the IMF had to come in because how does the IMF compare Ghana to another country and say Ghana is doing better than other African countries when those countries are using what we call the all-inclusive approach, and you are boasting that you are doing better, than most African countries. The IMF, as the arbiter who is keeping the records for all these countries, will say no. You must include all your costs to measure your true expenditure. This is the issue at stake.
Okay, it makes sense. Mr. Tekwe, thank you so much for this afternoon. Like you said, it will be good to have the criteria ready because that's one of the biggest conversations at the moment. How are we supporting businesses? But we don't have the criteria yet. We know there's 600 million. We're waiting for that criteria. I'm sure that will come to you, and I take your thoughts, whether or not you think that will help as we wait for this COVID-19 to be over. Thank you so much once again. Seth Tekwe is former finance minister, helping us to evaluate the impact of COVID-19 on our economy and also what we can do going forward. In his thoughts, we should focus on areas such as agriculture, health, energy with this particular intervention. I will see how that goes. Let's do Frontline. Welcome to Frontline, a segment that we've introduced to focus on the people who are working at the front lines in these times. Environmental health personnel on COVID-19 are protesting their exclusion from the list of frontline staff to benefit from government's stimulus package. The personnel are involved in surveillance, disinfection, isolation, and burial of persons who die from the virus. Ashanti Region branch of the Environmental Health Officers Association wants government to rectify that immediately, what it describes as an anomaly. Leaders say the members are on the burial team especially are exposed to a bigger risk, as they sometimes have to beg for personal protective equipment. Sometimes they even have to reuse ones that they've already used. Love FM's Erastus Asare Donko has more.
45-year-old father of 5, Adongo, an environmental health person. His job entails disinfecting suspected coronavirus-infested environments, preparing and burying of deceased persons who had been infected with COVID-19. Adongo has been actively involved in such activities since the first confirmed case and subsequently death of patients in the Ashanti region. He tells me the risk to his life is high, as he sometimes has to reuse disposable protective equipment or virtually beg for a new one to discharge his duty. Despite his exposure to the disease, he is not counted as a frontline staff and currently doesn't benefit from government's stimulus package.
You see, I'm a man here, I'm a Makara, I'm Ben. My wife told me when I was met me. Because somebody view, baby. Somebody in the Tadi, I'm a fairy cemetery question, somebody in Tadi, and I'm sorry for far for. I will Tadi about coffee. Maybe you for me. At least that time, when me by Casabi and boss, Bacasabi, I mean to say, you man work on a year, man. And tell yes, me, man, I'm a trader. I'm a man who follow the emboss of panel. You see, I was here and so coronavirus to say about so chat. Sikaka Krabi, Adia saw Yasane. It is Canandrian, our Cadrunas, daughters, Yabi.
Elvis also supervises burial of confirmed or suspected COVID-19 victims in Kumasi.
I could remember when we went to the Obuasi for the 4th burial. We went there and the PPEs were inadequate because the body was in the cold room. They do not have a mortuary where we have to dress up with all our PPEs coverall to go there and pick the dead body, which is in the body bag, into the casket. And right after that, all PPEs must be discarded. Then when we get to the cemetery, we have to use another PPEs, nose mask, gloves. All these things are utilities that need not be used more often. Immediately go nearer the body. After picking or doing 1 or 2 things, you have to change them. And this has been a very big challenge to us. Because
Adongo and Elvis represent many environmental health staff on local government payroll working on COVID-19 teams across the region. They say, unlike their colleague health staff, they have been excluded from government packages despite being exposed to the similar risk. The Ashanti Regional Association of Environmental Health Officers is not happy. Stella Gabriel is the regional president.
Your members of your association feel?
Well, in fact, we feel very disappointed and dejected. We have always been on the field together with other health workers. We are part of the rapid response team, the district management team. We also are in charge of disinfection, that is from the house of the infected person to even the hospital facility, and when the person dies, we take care of the burial. What can be more contagious than these activities that we carry out? Just like any other health worker, we have contact with the patient whilst alive, and when the patient passes away, we are being asked to take care of the dead body. And when it comes to enjoying a motivation or motivational package, they are trying to sideline us, which I think is very disheartening.
Head of Local Government Service, Dr. Nana Atto Arthur, says concerns of the environmental health workers have come to his attention, and he has forwarded same to government for redress.
In the current fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, environmental health officers take a frontline role, rubbing shoulders with their health practitioners on the field. When it comes to prevention, they are in people's homes. They are fumigating areas, disinfecting areas where suspected cases are. They bury the dead from COVID-19, but they are not counted as frontline workers who should benefit from Ghana's stimulus package. They are demanding their fair share of the national cake. Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaridonko, Kumasi.
So as the story has been told, has there been a response? I'm talking to Richard Kofi Jordan. He's the General Secretary of the Mortuary Workers Association of Ghana. Mr. Jordan, thank you for your time this afternoon. What are authorities saying about your concerns? Have they said anything to you?
Well, for us as mortuary workers, what we know is that it will be a great mistake for government to say that mortuary workers are not frontline. We have seen letters that includes mortuary staff as frontline. So for what we know is that we are expecting the package. I mean, in April, we didn't see anything.
Okay, so hold on, let me just get this clear. Did you just say that you have seen a list that has your names on it?
Yes, yes. I've seen a letter that includes mortuary staff.
Okay.
So I don't have any doubt that anybody will want to say that mortuary staff are not part of it.
Did you see the list today?
No, I think the letter came on the 18th of April. 18th or 20th, yes. I think forwarded to someone there. But what I'm saying is that letter stated clearly those who are supposed to benefit from the frontline workers. The letter stated there was initial letter which came. Some people were included which they were not supposed to. So this very letter I'm talking about includes mortuary staff. So I want to believe that that is the government's position.
Okay, so the concern is that even though you've seen your name on this particular list, you haven't heard anything?
No, we are waiting for the calculation to go. Okay. We want to see it on our payslip. Unless otherwise somebody is disputing it, we believe that we shall enjoy same like any other frontline workers.
Very well. Then I guess we'll come to you when that your payslip comes, and it's, I mean, when it is there, it's good news. We'll talk about it. When it's not there, I guess that will raise the issue again and get the responses, I believe.
Yes, but meanwhile, the tax relief, I think some people have indicated that yes, they've gotten some tax relief. We are not talking about 50%, which is a major issue. I just want to do that clarification.
Okay, can you say that again? I missed it.
I mean, what I'm saying is that for the tax relief, and it started in April, some people have said that yes, we've seen it. It's reflecting on our salary. That's a 50% bonus on civil salary, which we are also talking about now. But even that one, that is what I said. I said, I have seen a letter which includes mortuary staff. And so someone comes out to tell me it's not correct. We believe that we are part of the front line. We are not the front line, we are front and last line. We play two roles here, both front line and last line. So ours is even more critical.
You are indeed. And on this particular segment of the show, we focus on people like you, and we share your very personal stories with our viewers so they can appreciate the things that you go through. How has it been like? I mean, being a mortuary worker must be difficult already. But in these times, in these times of coronavirus, it certainly is as scary as hell. Tell me about your personal experience.
Especially when we have to fight government every day for PPE. Just yesterday, I still have a complaint of a mortuary not having one single PPE. With everything that we've been talking about. Remember, this agitation of PPE started some 2 years ago. We talked about it. We even decided to embark on some strike a little. And then even before the conflict and during the COVID-19, we keep talking about PPE. We wrote to the ministry indicating that we don't have PPE. So I can tell you that we have a lot of our members across the country who do not even know how the PPE looks like. It means they've not been given. Recently, I heard the Minister of Health saying that they have conducted an investigation and it indicated that some people were hoarding and selling the PPE. I just want to be sure, I just want to believe that those people will be brought to book.
Okay. I think, Mr. Jordan, I think that what we can do also is that the next time we talk to you, if you can give us perhaps a list of the specific mortuaries or your members that are complaining about lack of PPEs, perhaps we can forward that to authorities and get them to respond as quickly as possible. Perhaps it's not reached them.
Well, that would be okay.
Okay.
It's so it's the whole country you are talking about. So.
Okay. Well, but these are your members, so it should be easy for you to coordinate.
Yes,
you know.
I can do that.
Yes. Let's work with that way. Mr. Jordan, thank you so much for your time and for the work that you're doing. Hopefully, will make it easier and better for you, so you don't get exposed yourself. Richard Kofi Jordan is the General Secretary of the Mortuary Workers Association of Ghana, and that's it for Frontline. Now to our top story. Some residents of the Ashanti region mining town of Obuasi have protested the sighting of a COVID-19 isolation center there. Ironically, Obuasi has become the new epicenter of the coronavirus in the region. Out of 453 cases in the entire region, Obuasi alone has about 261. That's more than half of the region's case count. Take a look.
Out of 43,611 cumulative specimens collected in all districts in Ashanti, Obuasi accounts for the highest number of over 4,000. The town is the first in the region to have begun contact tracing after recording the first confirmed COVID-19 case. With support from mining giant AngloGold Ashanti, Obuasi has a strong COVID-19 task force whose control and command center provides 24-hour support service. Same, however, cannot be said of the attitude of the public, especially market women. They exhibit their doubts about existence of coronavirus by flouting with impunity every social distance protocol, exposing the town's 220,000 population to risk.
Yeah, was the funny man, you do teach ya ni say alien ewo obi asen fa na ni hu yate eso wa mu anin tum say ya social distance ana meboa so abogidi a nka ye ka social distance no kenti ase aye adwuma man ka ye foforo so uba ye wa hobi enama ye to nyina say ye ho la
ebi no mo gi akinyi say wo mu abanyi na ye hu nipa no ye ne abibifo se me to na dwuni na yale bia ya mea na saban abefa me kwano yi mea ba me to na dwuni bia ma ye nto me ye nsate ya nipa sa na abibifo te ye de nsa ba kire mto sa ma me wei yale no bi ya no ye de ne ko ha ene sei e ba se nkwai enkwala kura hu me on ba dwane.
The situation has compelled local authorities to close to business two major markets which share about 3,000 traders between them. Obuasi Municipal Chief Executive Elijah Adansibona tells JoyNews people openly demand to see COVID-19 patients to be convinced. He describes such negative attitude as worrying amid the national effort to overcome the pandemic.
They don't really believe the existence of the virus. I'm telling you. Wow. They think that if indeed the virus, where are the people? They've been asking us, where are the people? Show us where they live. But we cannot do that because of stigmatization. If you tell them that, oh, Mr. Simesi has got it, people run away from the person, and some can even commit suicide. So it is something we would never do. But we want the people to know that the virus is real and we should not play with it.
Local government and health authorities are nonetheless intensifying public sensitization. Mr. Adansibona warns he may be compelled to recommend a lockdown of Obuasi if disregard for laid down protocols continue.
If the people are not ready to go by what we are putting out, then I'll also be compelled to suggest to authorities that Obuasi should be, because we cannot defy others and say we are safe. We are not. So if you get to that point, yes, if I'm supposed to recommend, I will do that. But for now, let's implement what we've put together and see.
From Obuasi, Ohimintibia reporting.
I'll be connecting with Ohimin Interior. We're told that there is a development on that particular story. Ohimin connects with me right after this. Welcome back. Ohimin joins me with more on that Obuasi story. Ohimin, is rather disturbing. We understand that people actually went to an isolation center today. What did they go there for?
Yes, Gifty, that was yesterday. The information we picked was that when health authorities went to put the place in shape to admit patients or COVID-19 cases, positive cases, then residents massed up at the facility. So actually a guest house that has been turned into an isolation center, demanding that they relocate the facility since the residents there were not comfortable with the presence of the isolation center in their community. And the demand is that they don't want the facility to be sited in their location. And beyond this, it's not only yesterday that they went to the place, but ever since the owners of the facility, promised to release it to the health authorities to be used as isolation center, people have been up in arms against the owner and then health authorities to convert the guest house into an isolation center.
Authorities dealing with this particular problem, I mean, if they know that this is a site and they even bring people there, they may as well attempt to attack them. Are authorities doing anything about this?
Yes, the Obuasi COVID-19 task force has been up and doing with the support of the police. Yesterday, we went there to restore calm. And beyond this, the two district assemblies, we have the Obuasi Municipal and then the Obuasi East District Assemblies. The political heads have also been meeting to discuss a possible solution to the issue. And just today, the Regional Health Director, Dr. Emmanuel Simprine, and then his deputy, Dr. Nanaya Ofori, were all here to confer with the two political heads to find an amicable solution to the matter. Just a while ago, I was speaking to the acting municipal health director, Yamenu, who told me with the support of the two political heads in this area, they've been able to iron out those differences and possibly the isolation center will be put to use. Gifty.
Are you in Obuasi as we speak?
Yes, I'm in Obuasi currently.
The last time you reported, the people seem a bit lax as far as social distancing and masks wearing was concerned. What do you see at the moment?
Nothing has. I haven't seen so much change here. No, I haven't seen so much change here. The perception that even the virus is not in Obuasi has also influenced people's attention, their support, and their whatever efforts that they have to put in to ensure that they protect themselves against COVID-19. In areas that I visited today, I have been to Akaporiso, Tutuka, the Hababome, and those places. Almost everybody you meet, few of them are in nose masks. And those who are in nose masks are mostly those who are in their shops. These are places that I saw people in nose masks. And so this is a headache for the health officials, and they say that they will continue to educate the public, increase public sensitization on the use of the nose mask especially, and also to observe social distancing protocols. But the worry is that with the figures that we are seeing in Obuasi, these are not new cases, but they were part of the backlog that were collected about 3 weeks or 2 weeks ago. So the worry for health officials is that tracing these cases, people whose samples have been tested positive, is also a headache. It's something that they have started in earnest. And the fear is that there's a possibility that even the numbers will go up. Since the samples were taken 3 weeks ago and the people don't show any sign, they've been allowed to go back to their normal duties, the possibility of they mingling with the community is very high, and then maybe transmitting the virus is also high. So they say that they will do everything possible to complete the contact tracing to ensure that all those who are involved are reached.
Ohime, thank you very much for that update. Ohime Teria there bringing us an update on the situation in Obuasi, which is becoming an epicenter in the Ashanti region. Very worrying situation there. He'll bring us a report subsequently. We run out of time, but before we go, top story, public health experts are advocating increased mass testing following the shocking infection of 533 people by a single worker in what we're told is a fish processing factory in Ghana's industrial city of Tema. The infections were recorded out of about 8,000 tests conducted at that factory. Ghana's case count now, as you know, stands at 4,722 people have died. And it's prompting caution by the Ghana Medical Association against any immediate ease of the restrictions on public gathering. These have been the highlights in the country's COVID-19 fight, at least in the last 72 hours. From tomorrow, we'll bring you more with a health desk wrap and also talk to analysts about what this mass testing means and how, when it can be done. Let's do showbiz right after this. That's how we wrap up the entire show. There's more news at myjoyonline.com if you do log on, and I urge you to. My name is Gifty Andopia. It's always a pleasure coming your way.